Ready? Yeah, I think that the difference between making an album, which your goal is to document the best that you can, the song, perform the best that you can, as well as you can, and integrate the nuances that you hope will be there from that point forward. With the live animal, especially when it's truly live, you know, and it's something that will never be recreated. Oftentimes I look at those little moments, whether they're mistakes or changing, like for me as a singer, changing the melody a little bit, so that it's not redundant. And so it's like, you know, there's some people like, oh, you know, I went and saw this artist and it sounded just like the album, which is great. And I certainly want to get it close, but I also want there to be moments where it's like, oh, that was different. That's cool. You know, he tried this here, he did that there. I like to play with the melodies occasionally. I don't, you know, I learned that from watching Paul Rogers, who's one of my favorites, and like how he'll approach something and it won't be exactly like it was. And that's cool. You know, it's that level, like a certain improvisation. I learned that from a lot of the like more blues-based singers is to incorporate that into the performance, so that when people show up, they're getting something special that will never be created again. That's why I love jazz music, because it's like improvisation. If you're improvising your solos, and it's never the same solo twice. That's cool. Yeah, I started on the trumpet, thanks to my mother, and I remember that day very well because I'd been out playing. In America, we call it soccer, but football. And I was playing soccer with my little brother, and came in for dinner. And it was early in the school year when it's starting the third grade, and she's like, "Oh, well, tomorrow there's a program that, you know, I want you to play an instrument," because I didn't have the opportunity to do that. And there's a rental program, or that you can rent an instrument every month, and I want you to play something. And I was like, "Oh, Mom, I just want to play soccer. I just want to play sports," you know. She said, "No, this is really important to me. So thank you, Mom." Because that kind of set up the foundation. And so we went the next day, and I almost started with the saxophone, but that looked kind of complicated. Had a lot of doodads. And I was like, "Yeah, the trumpet thing looks easy. There's just 3 valves." So that's what I started with. And it kind of, you know, it wasn't, I liked it. It came pretty easy to me. I didn't really practice much, but I do remember one of the most uplifting moments with the trumpet was trying to learn the horn line to Sir Duke by Stevie Wonder. You know, da 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 da. I'm singing the wrong key, but da 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 da. You know, pretty challenging for a little kid, but I tried, it just that moment of like, oh wow, it's so empowering, like, and that really stuck with me. The guitar didn't come for years later. And I started as when I first heard, I think it was Eruption. It was the same afternoon I heard Eruption by Eddie Van Halen, and then I heard Whole Lotta Love, and I was sold. I was like, whatever that instrument is, I want to do that. So I started as an air guitar. Yeah, I would just have a tennis racket and play in front of the mirror for hours, until my stepfather one day was just like, "Son, why don't you learn to play for real?" Like. And I was like, wow, well, that's a great idea, Dad. Okay. So we worked out a plan where we had a few horses, and he said, "I'll give you $1 for every stall you clean." Talk about child labor-ish. I mean, like, a stall takes it's 45 minutes per stall, and it's horse manure. So it's, to this day, when I think of my first guitar, I can still smell horse manure. But we worked it out, and I cleaned stalls for 9 months, and I cleaned a lot of stalls, saved up $350 for my first guitar, and it was an Ibanez DT250. And so I got that in the beginning, or no, in the April. I remember the day, April 13th of, this is a long time ago, 1985. And I got this guitar, and it changed. And that was it. That was like the beginning. And my parents they hardly ever saw me after that day. I went from getting pretty good grades, like I was in honor society and was a good student. Grade point dropped like dramatically. Like I didn't care about school anymore. All I wanted to do was sit in my room and learn songs. And it was the best. It was the best. I don't know if there's any one particular thing. I think it's just a lot of time with the instrument and performing live night after night after night after night, putting in your 10,000 hours, then your 20,000 hours. And so it really, I don't know. I just feel like when I pick it up now, I've learned to really use my right hand differently. I think if you'd have talked to me 25 years ago, I didn't dig in quite as much. It would have been more, kind of. But now, it just. I've really come down on it. And I think that some of that was just through standing next to players who did dig in, both Slash and Mark Tremonti. I started to notice that with their right hand, and I would just kind of watch and hear the difference that would make dynamically. There's an intensity that I really embraced. I think the mistake I made early on as a young guitar player is there was this pick called the stylus pick. And when I worked at a music store, and it was cool because everybody was trying to get their technique, you're trying to get your right hand as fast as possible. And what this pick taught you was to only use the top part of the pick. And it had a style, it literally was like this little thing that protruded out. And if you caught the string, it would like catch. So it would keep you from picking. It would catch you. So I, for a long time, just used the very tip of the pick. But in some ways, I kind of regret that decision to ever spend my hard-earned $10 or whatever on that. So yes, time's gone on. I'm more accepting of digging in, and also turning the pick at an angle a little bit. That was another thing that I used to just hit it dead on, and I wish I had an electric here. I wish I had my signature with me because it would be way easier to demo this stuff. But the right hand to me is very important. The other thing for me, and this is a personal thing, and once again, it's really hard to demo it on acoustic. I wish I had an electric, but the vibrato, your left hand. For me, that's the most, and that was the thing that evolved. It took a long time. I used to just sit. I remember when I took 2 years I got my degree in commercial music and jazz studies, right? So I was taking theory and learning to arrange for big bands, and just a lot of study revolving around understanding the ins and outs of music, which I'm forever grateful for. But some of the best and most important parts of that education was just time off in between classes and sitting with my guitar and working on just different ways of expressing myself, be it how I bent, which I'm not even going to try on this guitar. But most important was this, was it going to be a fast vibrato, which it's really hard on this guitar, or kind of a slow, like I really loved John Sykes, who played on the 87 Whitesnake record and then went on to do Blue Murder. I loved his wide vibrato. And so I would just sit there, and would I pull it down? Would I push, would I do like the Clapton thing? So that was something that I spent a lot of time developing, and I'm glad I did, because I feel like a player's vibrato is that's the most that's the most personal thing, you know? It's kind of like that's the thing where you can hear a guy and go, oh, it's like to me, Slash, that's what I love about his playing is like I can hear him play one note and I know that's Slash. It's like it's just the way he attacks it. It's that combination of what he's doing with his right hand and what his left hand. Then he's got such an expressive vibrato. It's beautiful. Um, so yeah, vibratos. It's a big one. I generally tend to gravitate towards the mahogany body and the spruce top. I like rosewood too. I like the rosewood bodies. I think I have an old Martin at home with a rosewood body, and it's got a certain thing that it does. But yeah, there's just something about that combination of those woods. It just works well for me. You know, what I like to hear. And I like the size. I like the orchestra models as well. Occasionally a jumbo, depending on the part. It really does depend on the kind of part that it is. If I'm doing more finger style stuff, I'll want a smaller body guitar that will project differently. You know, I think that was something I learned from watching The Big. Remember when Eric Clapton did the Unplugged performance? And he had those older, he had that Martin, I forget which model that was, but I believe it was an orchestra model, and or maybe it's triple O. But because before that, I just thought, oh, the bigger the better. You know, as a dumb kid, I'm just like, oh, if it's a bigger guitar, it's going to sound better. And I just didn't understand the nuances. So that's something that the part will dictate where I'm going to gravitate towards, especially if I'm in the studio. Yeah, you know, it's funny. It's something I don't think about. I generally, here's can I grab this one here just to show you, do an example. There was, thank you. I remember this was about 2002 or so, and my motto has always been a day without making music is a wasted day. Well, there was one day in particular I just couldn't get my act together, and I procrastinated, and I couldn't find the inspiration, and I went to bed, and I remember just being really frustrated. It was like 2 a.m, and I was like I got to get down in my studio and at least try, like, or else I've just wasted a day. So I remember I picked up a guitar and I decided to put into it like an open G tuning. And this just happened. I was like, I don't know what that is, but that's there it goes. We didn't just waste a day. You know, whatever that moment was, this was worth getting up at 2 a.m. for. So then it's like, okay, what's the first thing you feel melodically, you know, vocally? What are you going to do? And again, it was pretty simple. You just followed the line. Leaves are on the ground. All right. I don't know if that lyric came at that point. Fall has come. Blue skies turning gray. So it was one of those things where I just kind of fell into the moment. And I felt like the melody that the guitar had at that point was strong enough that I could actually go ahead and hang the vocal melody on it as well. Because sometimes what I'll do is I'll be very cognizant of not singing the same melody that the guitar, like if it's a riff, you know, I'm not going to do follow the riff, you know, 90% of the time that's not going to be the case, but this felt right. So yeah, it's just a matter of keeping your antenna up, because that's all the songwriting is, all creating is just keeping your antenna up and waiting for the universe to drop whatever in your lap, and have the ability to know when it's something that you should continue to develop. So At that point, I kept going, and because I knew there was something, there was a spark here, something special, and don't get lazy with this one. So I don't know if it was in that sitting. I think it probably was. So I was like, well, where are we going for the chorus here? And a lot of times, if I'm already inspired melodically, then I'll just start singing as I'm playing the chord. And who is gonna save you when I'm gone? And who watch over you? And it came pretty quickly. And it was just like, okay, let's put the antenna down now. Let's go to sleep. and then it was a matter of just, developing the lyric and whatnot. But I find that oftentimes my favorite ones, and the ones that have become most important in the catalog for the things I've been part of, are the ones that they come together relatively quickly. So you're always grateful for that, because as a songwriter, you feel like you're only as good as the last song you wrote. And when the universe isn't giving you anything, when you go, it's like, you know what it is? It's like fishing. Not that I'm really a fisherman, but it's the idea you keep casting your line out there and you keep hoping you're going to catch something. And sometimes you'll cast a line for a week and there'll be nothing. And you'll be like, I can't write anymore. I got nothing. The well's dry. And then other times you'll catch a big one. And that's why you keep doing it. Generally speaking, 99% of the time, it's the melody. For me, it's all about the melody. That's paramount. Usually the foundation is whatever the guitar part is, and then the melody will be built upon that. There's just something about, once I know the melody is in place, where I feel comfortable then putting in the time to the lyric. Because and I've done it hundreds of times, where I'll spend all this time coming to, I work really hard at the lyrics. To me, the lyric writing is the most, it's the soul of the song, right? But the melody is what attracts you. It's like, I've heard this someone talk, I think it was in a movie somewhere, and I thought it was just brilliant from a songwriter's perspective, which is that when you go to say a pub or a bar or something, and you're single, and you look across the room, and there's a beautiful girl. That's the melody. You're attracted to her beauty. That's her, that's the melody, right? But when you get to know the person, that's the soul, that's the essence. There's the lyric. And so I want to make sure that if you're attracted to a song, that when you dig in, and that hopefully there's something compelling from a lyrical standpoint. All right, so, but with that said, all right, occasionally a melody and a lyric will just happen at the same time. And they'll happen at a very strange time when you least expect it. So this was, I don't even remember, this was probably 2000, early 2000s. And I used to really love, people are like, why are you doing? I used to love washing my doing my dishes. We didn't even have a dishwasher for a long time, until Selena, my wife, she was just like, we need a dishwasher. Enough's enough. And also, I'd mowed my lawn for the longest time, because I found that doing those chores were when a lot of my favorite ideas would happen. They just happen. It's just like, because you're kind of turning off certain parts of your brain and you're not trying to write. So one day I'm mowing the lawn, and I just hear this, in the year of, I'll do it in the C. In the year of the tiger, I won't weep and moan. And I was just like, in the year of the tiger. I don't know what that is. I don't know where that's coming from, but I grabbed I used to time had micro cassette recorder, and I just sang it. And it was it was one of those little melodies and lyrics that stuck with me for years, but I never found a home for it. I just knew, I was just like, it just kept coming back to me. And the good ones, or at least the ones that resonate with me, that's usually what you rely on, is if it just keeps coming back around and like remind you, you need to finish this idea. You need to finish this idea. And so that's what happened here. It appeared at the same time, which is always the best way, because then you don't have to stress about how you're going to play the ultimate game of hangman. Do you know what hangman is? So that's how I look at lyric writing, where you'll have a melody and you have this many spaces, this many syllables you need to fill, and you have to find the right lyric for it. But when the universe gives you the whole thing and it's already there, you're good to go. So the trick, once I had that, was just finding the right chord progression for it and the right feel for it. I had the melody, but I didn't know what was going to go underneath it, which is so far from the way I usually like to write a song, because usually I like to establish what the canvas is, the sonic canvas is, long before the melody and the lyric come. So I remember sitting in the back of the bus, probably well over 10 years later.
In the year of the tiger, I won't weep and moan. Got no time for cool and heels, I got to roam. Tiger, I'm gonna roll these bones.
You know, and it was just like, well, there it is. And it was really simple. And it was, you know, it wasn't anything too advanced harmonically, but it just fit what that melody needed to be. So yeah. And then it was just a matter of trying to find the B section, which was the and so on and so forth, the descending one. And that was pretty much it, you know. So then I had to fill in the pieces with the rest of the lyrics, and then that took a lot of time. But that main hook, mowing the lawn. Mow your lawn, kids. You never know. As far as my own style goes, I think it's more in the lead realm as far as how I approach leads. A lot of my favorite singer guitar players are guys that they kind of approach the way they improvise and the way they speak through the instrument the same way they sing. And to me, a really great example of that is Warren Haynes from Government Mule. And I learned a lot through listening to him and the way his phrasing was, because it's very vocal. It's very, when he sings with him, he's got an incredible voice. But it's synonymous with the way he approaches his leads. So I think that as a guitar player, I try to do that. And once again, it's really hard to show you an example of that on an acoustic guitar. But like this, I do a solo on Blackbird, the Alter Bridge song. And to me, it's very much how I would have sung that section, you know. I can't do it on, I won't even try to bend it. And once again, you know, the vibrato is important. If I was on an electric guitar, I would be able to show that example a little better. But ultimately, what I'm trying to say here is, instead of a flurry of notes, a bunch of just, you know, histrionics, it's about the phrasing, and it's about there's a vocal aspect to it. Another player who I love who does that very well is David Gilmour. So I think for me, just listening to guys like that, listening to how they approach their leads and tell a really, to me, it's a very compelling way of emoting without the use of too much flash. But then there's that part of me that I grew up in the 80s and shred was king, you know, so I still have that thing that I like to do occasionally. You know, occasionally I want it in my hip pocket and I want to punctuate the end of a solo with a flurry of notes. So it's, for me, it's kind of that balance where it's not too I'm not saying too much, I'm not saying too little. I'm just trying to find like a good middle ground. And that's something I'm still chasing down and trying to get better at. I have a long ways to go. I don't have it perfected, but as time goes on, I'm hoping that one day I'll finally record a solo I'm happy with.